I was 52 when it all began, well, when I finally noticed. Looking back now, the signs were always there, but I was too wrapped up in routine to see them. For 15 years, I worked at a small architecture firm in Charlottesville, Virginia. A quiet little office tucked between an old bookstore and a bakery that smelled like cinnamon and warm butter. Every morning, I'd grab a coffee and a scone from next door and settle into my desk before most people even turned on their lights. My boss, Alan, was a man of habits too. He was older than me by a good 10 years, maybe more, but age didn't seem to hang on him the way it did with others. Tall, silver at the temples, always in a pressed white shirt and dark tie. He was the kind of man who seemed to carry the weight of quiet thoughts. Respectful. Private. Distant, but not unkind. For years, our interactions were strictly professional. A polite nod, a passing comment about the weather, or a client's revision notes. But there was always something elusive about him, like a book with pages glued shut. It was a rainy Wednesday in early March when something shifted. The office was quiet, the kind of quiet where you can hear the clock tick louder than your own breathing. A power outage had frozen all the computers, and most of the team went home early. I stayed, mostly out of habit, and because I had nowhere pressing to be. Alan was still there too. "Coffee?" he asked, standing at the edge of my desk with 2 mismatched mugs in his hands. I blinked. Sure. We sat in the break room, the soft patter of rain tapping the windows behind us. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, but it felt calm. "You've been here a long time," he said, not as a statement of fact, but like he was genuinely reflecting on it. 15 years this fall, I replied. Didn't plan on staying this long. Just sort of. Happened. He chuckled, a sound I hadn't heard from him in all those years. It was warm, familiar. It startled me in a good way. "You remind me of someone," he said quietly. "Oh, who?" He shook his head, the moment slipping away as quickly as it arrived. "Never mind." But something lingered in his eyes, a softness, maybe even sorrow. That was the first moment I saw beneath the surface, and once I saw it, I couldn't stop looking. Over the next few weeks, we started talking more. At first, it was small things. Weekend plans, books we were reading, memories of our childhoods. I learned he'd grown up in Vermont, loved sailing, and hated birthdays. He learned I'd been widowed at 48 and had a daughter who lived 2 states away. These little exchanges became a rhythm, like stepping stones across a river I didn't realize I wanted to cross. Then came that day. It was late, almost 7 p.m. The office was empty again, and I was finishing a report when I heard a knock on my doorframe. "Got a minute?" Alan asked. Of course. He stepped inside, hands in his pockets, eyes scanning the floor before landing on mine. "There's something I've wanted to tell you for a long time," he began, "but I never had the right moment. I'm not even sure this is it." His voice trembled, not much, but enough to notice. I sat up straighter. "What is it?" He paused, then let out a breath like he'd been holding it for years. "Do you remember Eleanor? My wife?" I nodded. Everyone at the office knew he was a widower, though he rarely spoke of her. She passed before I was hired. She wasn't the love of my life. My brows furrowed. "Oh." He looked up then, really looked at me. His eyes were softer than I'd ever seen them. "It's you," he said. "It's always been you." The words hung in the air, heavy, fragile. I didn't know what to say. My heart pounded in my ears, and the walls seemed to close in and breathe at the same time. 15 years of passing glances, quiet admiration, unspoken understanding. It all clicked into place. I opened my mouth, then closed it again. Finally, I whispered, "Why didn't you ever say anything?" He ran a hand through his hair. "Because I thought I had time, and then time kept passing, and you never seemed to look at me that way." I didn't, I admitted, not until recently. We sat in silence for a moment, the kind of silence that isn't empty, but full. Full of questions, memories, regrets, and something new. Possibility. He stood up then, slowly. "I'm not asking for anything. I just needed you to know." As he walked away, I felt something stir in me. Not fear, not confusion, but something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. The days that followed felt like I was walking through fog. The world looked the same. The flicker of office lights, the clack of keyboards, the familiar scent of ink and old coffee. But I wasn't the same. I kept replaying his words in my head. "It's you. It's always been you." It was strange how one sentence could rattle the bones of your entire life. I wasn't a woman prone to fantasies. I'd lived through too much. I'd buried a husband, raised a daughter mostly on my own, survived layoffs, illness, loneliness. But there was something about the way Alan said it, quietly, deliberately, that made me believe every syllable. He wasn't trying to charm me. He wasn't hoping for anything. He just needed me to know. And I did. Oh, I did. We didn't speak of it again that week. He went back to his normal, composed self, and I pretended to do the same. But something had shifted. Our conversations, though brief, carried a current underneath, an invisible string pulling us closer, then releasing, then tugging again. One Friday evening, long after the others had left, I found myself hesitating by his door. He was in there, I could tell by the glow of the desk lamp and the silhouette of his shoulder beneath the window. I didn't knock. I just stood there like a fool, holding a folder I didn't need, wondering what it would feel like to just step in. Before I could lose my nerve, he looked up. "Still here?" he asked. "I could ask you the same," I replied with a smile that felt a little too nervous. He leaned back in his chair. "Come in." I stepped in slowly, feeling the gravity of the moment before I even said a word. His office was neat but warm, lined with books, framed sketches of old stone buildings, and one photo of a lake with a wooden dock that looked like it belonged in a memory more than a picture frame. I sat across from him, tucking my hands into my lap like a schoolgirl. "I've been thinking about what you said," I began. He nodded, waiting. "I don't know how I feel. I mean, I do, but I don't know what to do with it." "I understand," he said. "This isn't easy or fair." I looked at him for a long moment. His face was softer in this light, more human than boss, more familiar than I ever allowed myself to admit. "You're not asking for anything," I said, "but I think I am." His brow lifted, eyes meeting mine with a quiet intensity. "What do you mean?" "I want to know you, not as my boss, not as the man who walks into the office at 8:03 every morning with the same thermos and tie. I want to know who you are when you're not holding everything together." He stared at me for a second, surprised, I think, but then the corners of his mouth turned up just slightly. "Then let's take a walk," he said. That night, we didn't go far. Just a few blocks around the square, past the bakery and the dim storefronts closed for the night. The air was cool and soft, and our footsteps echoed in harmony. He told me about his late wife, Eleanor, how they married young and stayed together out of habit more than happiness, how they grew apart but remained loyal, because that's what their generation did. She was kind, he said, but she never really saw me, not all of me. I listened without judgment, walking slowly beside him. Do you think anyone ever has? He looked at me then, long and slow. I think you might be the first. We didn't touch that night. No hands brushing. No lingering glances that turned into something else. But when we stopped at the curb in front of my car, he said, "Thank you," and I understood what he meant. It was the thank you of a man who'd been holding his breath for years and finally exhaled. Over the next few weeks, we found our rhythm again, but it was different, deeper. The conversations turned richer, the silences more comfortable. We started sharing lunch in the break room instead of eating alone at our desks. Sometimes we talk about work, but more often we talk about things that had nothing to do with blueprints or city permits. He told me about the cabin in Vermont where he used to sail as a boy. I told him about my dream of running a little flower shop by the coast someday. And then one afternoon, as I was gathering my things to leave, he walked up behind me and placed a small envelope on my desk. "What's this?" I asked. "An invitation," he said. Inside was a handwritten note. Dinner. Saturday. My place. No pretense. Just you and me. Alan. I held the card in my hand, my heart a full drumbeat in my chest. He wasn't asking for much. Just time. Just presence. Just honesty. And for once, I wasn't afraid to give it. I stood outside his front door for a good 2 minutes before I knocked. It was one of those older homes with ivy crawling up the brick and tall windows that gave away soft pools of warm light from inside. The kind of house that looked like it held memories in its walls. Real ones, laughter, loss, silence. When the door opened, Alan stood there, not in his usual crisp shirt and tie, but in a soft navy sweater and dark jeans. It was strange seeing him like that. Like seeing a photograph you'd glanced at for years suddenly come to life. "You came," he said, and there was something gentle in his voice, almost like he didn't expect me to show. I said I would. I smiled, though I wasn't sure my voice came out as steady as I'd hoped. Inside, the house smelled like roasted garlic and rosemary. Classical piano music played low in the background, just enough to fill the space without getting in the way. The dining table was set for 2, candles, cloth napkins, even a vase with fresh daisies. "You really went all out," I said, stepping in. "I haven't done this in a long time," he admitted. "Maybe ever." Dinner was homemade pasta with grilled vegetables and a bottle of red wine he'd been saving for years. Conversation flowed easily, like we were old friends just catching up. We talked about our childhoods again, things we'd missed the first time. I told him about the first boy who broke my heart when I was 17. He told me about the time he snuck out to watch a meteor shower at midnight, lying on a hill in Vermont with nothing but a flannel blanket and dreams he didn't yet know how to name. At one point, I laughed so hard I nearly spilled my wine. He smiled so wide, his eyes crinkled at the corners. "I haven't seen you laugh like that," he said, watching me. "I haven't laughed like that in a while," I replied honestly. There was something happening between us, but neither of us rushed it. There were no heavy glances, no reaching across the table to touch hands. Just the soft and steady building of something real. Something that didn't need to be named yet. After dinner, we moved to the living room. He poured us more wine, and we settled into the old leather couch that creaked just enough to feel like home. The fireplace crackled, though I suspected he'd lit it more for the atmosphere than the warmth. I turned to him then, feeling the weight of the moment. "Can I ask you something?" "Anything." Why now? After all these years? He took a breath. Because something about this stage of life, it strips away everything that doesn't matter. The ambition, the pride, the fear of what people will think. I've spent too long hiding behind what's appropriate or expected. But I see you, and I want to be seen by you. And if I don't save it now, I may never get the chance again. I didn't speak right away. Instead, I reached for his hand, tentatively at first. His fingers were warm and strong, but there was a vulnerability in the way he held mine back, like he wasn't used to being touched with care. I see you too, I said quietly. I think I've been seeing you for a while, but I didn't know what I was looking at. We sat like that for a long time. No rushing, no pretending. Just two people in the quiet of a home, years of unspoken feelings settling between us like dust in sunbeams. Eventually, the evening grew late. He offered to walk me to my car, but I said no. I needed a few moments alone to think. As I stepped into the cool night air, I looked back at the house, the glow of the porch light, the soft outline of his frame watching from the doorway, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Excitement, but not the nervous kind, the grounded kind, the kind that tells you are exactly where you're supposed to be. That night, lying in bed, I thought about how life never stops surprising you. I thought about how we spend years building walls, only to realize that sometimes the most beautiful moments happen when we let someone walk through the door. And for the first time in a long time, I let myself wonder what it would feel like to let someone stay. The weeks that followed felt like a slow unfolding. Not dramatic, not rushed, just quiet moments strung together like pearls. Simple, delicate, meaningful. Alan and I didn't fall into each other like some whirlwind romance. No, it was more like settling into a familiar chair you didn't know you'd missed until you sat in it again. A rediscovery of comfort, of warmth. We kept our work life separate, something we both silently agreed upon. But outside those office walls, something new was blooming. We spent evenings cooking together, sharing favorite songs, watching old movies where the endings were soft and hopeful. One night, as we sat out on his porch under the wide Virginia sky, he said, "I used to think love had to be this. Fire. All-consuming. Dramatic. But now, I think maybe the real kind, the lasting kind, is more like this." He gestured around us, the hum of cicadas, the rustle of wind through the trees, the glow of a lantern swinging gently above us. Still, he continued, but alive. I looked at him and felt something ache in my chest, the kind of ache that comes from finally recognizing yourself in someone else's eyes. I think, I said, it was always there, just waiting for us to slow down enough to see it. And maybe that was the whole truth. We weren't young anymore. We'd loved and lost, endured heartache, buried dreams, raised children, made compromises. We'd carried regret like a second skin. But here, in this second act of life, we were finally learning that love didn't need grand gestures. It needed honesty, patience, presence. Then, one Sunday afternoon, something happened that shifted everything. We were cleaning out his attic, boxes stacked with old photos, letters, keepsakes from a life once carefully curated. I came across a small, dusty journal, Alan's handwriting. He reached for it, hesitated, then sat down with a sigh. "I started writing in this the year you were hired," he said softly. My breath caught. "You've been journaling all this time?" He opened to a page somewhere in the middle, scanned it, then passed the book to me. "Read it," he said. The words were raw and honest. They spoke of loneliness, of admiration, of confusion, of restraint. But most of all, they spoke of me. Not in a possessive way, not with longing that demanded something, but with deep, quiet respect, with gratitude, with awe. I didn't realize I was crying until he reached over and wiped a tear from my cheek with his thumb. "I never intended for you to see this," he said, "but I think you should know the truth of how much you've meant to me." I closed the journal and placed it gently beside us. I whispered, "we've both been carrying truths we were too afraid to speak out loud." He nodded, the corners of his eyes shining. We didn't say much after that. We didn't need to. And in the days that followed, we began making small changes, not to chase some youthful fantasy, but to live more intentionally. I started taking Fridays off to visit my daughter more. He signed up for a watercolor class he'd always been too busy for. We even took a trip to Vermont, to the lake he told me about. The dock still there, the water still clear and wide. One morning, wrapped in a soft knit shawl, I watched him sketch that lake with delicate, thoughtful lines. When he was done, he handed me the page. At the bottom, he'd written, "Still, but alive." That drawing now hangs in my bedroom. A daily reminder that life doesn't end at 50 or 60 or even 70. That connection, real connection, can come when you least expect it if you're brave enough to open the door. We never moved in together. We didn't need to. Our love didn't demand constant presence. It was made of trust, of companionship, of long walks and shared silence, of showing up, always showing up. And that's what this story really is. Not about secrets or scandal or lost time. It's about the courage to speak, to listen, to see someone fully and allow yourself to be seen in return. Alan's secret wasn't something shameful or shocking. It was that even after all those years, all those quiet glances and missed chances, love still found a way. And I, a woman who once believed her best years were behind her, discovered that sometimes, just sometimes, life saves the sweetest part for the end. If this story touched you, don't forget to like the video, leave a comment below, and subscribe for more heartfelt stories just like this one.